It's Orfeh. Welcome to Jason Unleashed. Hi.
Thank you, Jason Unleashed. How are you?
I'm fantastic. New York's finest, Manhattan girl. You're a native New
I
Yorker.
am. You should know by now.
Yes, vocals. Okay, first, congratulations on what a life you've had. You are, as we were talking about off air, a Broadway darling, a music darling, Tony nominated. You are all the things. For how's life? How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. It always sounds better when other people say it to me because I'm so hard on myself that I don't even know who you're talking about. But hey, it sounds really good.
Why are you hard on yourself? You're so
Oh, I
accomplished.
think we all are. I think we all are. People are just generally, I'd rather be harder on myself than anyone can be on me. So I think with how like kind of relentless I am with myself. I think whatever anybody else says holds no candle to me. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm girded for that, you
I
know.
think it's because we're creatives and we give of our talent and our creativity
Yeah,
from such a vulnerable, visceral place to be
exactly.
judged. And
Yeah,
we're judged throughout our whole career. Either they like you, they love you, they don't like you, they don't want to see you again. So you're constantly having to like build this
prove
armor
yourself.
of
Yeah.
right, prepare yourself for like impact. And sometimes the impact is soft,
Yeah,
but
but not always.
not always. But as
And
I
by the way,
said,
all of that happens sometimes simultaneously in the
right,
same moment. They love
right.
you, hate you at the same time. They want you, they don't want you all at the same time. It all happens simultaneously. And you're like, okay, I don't know what to do with this, but it's all happening at once. Everything, everywhere, all at once. You know?
Right. Repeatedly. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. You
Okay.
grew up loving music. When did you decide that this was a career path that you had to embark on, regardless of how it turned out? When you threw caution to the wind and said, you know what? I'm a star, damn it.
Well, all 5-year-olds are kind of delulu, right? So maybe then. But I don't think I had a choice. I don't know that I made a decision. I don't think I had a choice. The
Uh,
only other field I ever thought I would go into was medicine, but I also didn't want to be in school till I was like 107. And
100%.
that was the only deterrent was how much school there was. So that was the only other, and I thought, I got a record deal straight out of high school, so I thought it was a sign, and I guess it was. So that's really where the tides took me, and I wanted it so much that I didn't go to medical school. I didn't,
What was going to be your course of study? What medicine were you going to practice in
oh,
medical?
I don't know, whatever they would, whatever they would. I sang before I spoke, so.
Well, that voice, I mean, you've been touched by the divine one because Orfeh, you have such a distinct texture
Oh,
to
thank you.
your voice, a very moving, gripping, powerful sway
Thank
of
you,
your
Jay.
voice. Yeah, you absolutely you hear a lot of Broadway singers and professionally trained singers and classically trained vocalists who they sound great. Yeah, I mean they're awesome, but very rarely or not often do you come across a voice such as yours that has that something, that rasp,
Thank you.
that
Thank you.
it's almost as if you're like a mutant. You have this mutant power, and when you open your mouth and sing, it's very apparent that you're special.
Definitely a mutant. Yeah. No, I listen, I think that was just, I don't know. It was a true blessing from the heavens. I don't have any explanation for it, but it was a little jarring coming out of the mouth of a young girl. You know what I mean? It was a little hard for people to take when I was 8 or 10 because the voice was kind of this always. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So it was I've heard it called an acquired taste. That person is an asshole. But yeah,
Totally. Yes, asshole.
so, but I'm just very grateful for it.
You said that you got a record contract out of high school. That's very young. You, much like Madonna, Mariah, in this business started out young, in
Yeah.
a business that is still dominated by men, but I'm sure in your early days, even more so, right? And trying to navigate that. Who supported you throughout this? Family, friends, who told you that you could do it?
Nobody. Honestly, my dear departed stepfather, he is the one that really pushed me in all of the areas and aspects of entertainment because he really was like, "Oh, this kid has to do this." And I would annoy the hell out of all of the adults in the house because I'd sing every jingle. And if we went on a, in a car with the family, every song on the radio, I'd be singing and belting it at the top of my lungs. And I was, I just would play skits in the, at home. And he was like, this is what this kid has to do. This is ridiculous. There's a talent here. So he recognized it. But I think that in the music business, we were so young. And so, I had a partner in the recording group, Mike Moore. We didn't like our parents were not momagers and dadagers or anything like that. So we were literally thrown into the fire.
But I think that's probably the best way, regardless of how it turns out. I think
Right.
that trial by fire is when you look back, and I'm sure when you look back now, you're probably thankful that you had those experiences because it really helps you cut your teeth for
Yeah.
where you're going to go further. So you had a record contract. What were your inspirations? Who inspired you vocally growing up?
Listen, the love of my life, the real GOAT for me is Prince. He will always be the GOAT. Shaka Khan,
Shaka.
Eddie LeVert and Walter Williams, the OJs. You know what I mean? Like Gladys Knight. These were who I looked up to. Whitney, I think there will never, ever, ever be a voice like
Never,
Whitney
never.
again, so long as time exists, as long as music exists. So, but just growing up, I wanted to sing like the guys. Like I wanted to do those like crazy 7-part harmonies in the guy groups, like you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'd sit there with multiple tape recorders and sing one line in one and one line in another, and then I'd play them all together and they'd be harmonizing with each other. So like I invented multi-tracking, but I didn't get the
You get
credit
the
for
credit
it.
for it?
No, I didn't.
When did Broadway come calling?
It just let me tell you about the fluke of all flukes, but then you go, well, like obviously there's a blueprint to your life,
Uh-huh.
like that you don't realize is what it is. If you believe in all that esoteric
Totally
stuff,
do.
kind of
Absolutely
like
do.
you make agreements before you get it. I don't know. Long story, slightly shorter. Uh, when I was in my music group, we had a lot of dancers and singers, and we all traveled together. We were very close because we'd be at, 4 gigs in 4 different cities a day. You know what I mean? 4 airplanes and, at all the radio stations doing like promo gigs and all those things and performing and all that. So two of my male dancers, we had so many and they were so phenomenal, and I'm really close with some of them to this day. My dancer, AC Siula, became the choreographer of Footloose, the musical.
Which was your
Straight,
debut, right?
which was my debut, but straight off of like Orrin Moore. Like when Orrin Moore kind of fell apart for all the reasons that would be the greatest episode of, Behind the Music or Unsung. It's too bad they haven't called me yet because boy, do I have stories for them. AC went on to choreograph Footloose. Random. I think he just threw his hat in the ring and got the gig. So he calls me up and he says, hey, do you want to audition for Footloose? It's like, what? He's like, yeah, they need a swing. I'm going, listen, I don't know what you're saying, but you might as well just be speaking a different language to me. I don't know what that means. It's like, look, a swing is like an understudy for all, like multiple parts. You're not just covering one person. You'd be aware of like having to step into multiple roles. I said, okay, I guess, He's like, bring a book.
Your steps were ordered. That was supposed to happen for you. You were supposed to make your Broadway debut in Footloose. That was it. And to go on to Chicago, Legally Blonde, to see your name in the playbill, to be
Is that
not,
my name up on that list? I was
yeah.
Laura Bob, like, can I sing the song? She's like, what do you stop asking me? Just sing the fucking song.
But do you still look back, or do you even look back now and think like, wow, this is my life? Because you have your own music. We're going to talk about that in a second. But to have this career, what do you say to yourself? Is it old hat yet? Or do you want more? Is there more
No,
Broadway?
I definitely want more all the time because again, you as your operant power, you don't realize that. You don't recognize it because you can't see it from here. You know what I mean? You're living in it. So most of the time I just go, I didn't do enough and I should have done this and why didn't I do this? Why didn't I invent, Instagram? Like you always think like there was something more that you could do and you're never satisfied, which I think is a good thing because then you don't rest and go, oh, well, I've done enough Broadway or I've done enough. Like then you give up opportunities that perhaps, to your point, are meant for you. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I never, ever rest and think, okay, well, I'm done. First of all, I've got a very long life, hopefully to live. So to quit now, what's the point? You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
always striving and I'm always looking and I'm always searching. I got into Chicago 27 years after the show had been running. You know what I'm saying? You can't. Obviously, there are some things that are not right for you as an artist and don't really fit. And you're not stretching. You're just making a fool out of yourself. But something like that, if I were to be like, well, I don't want to be the 900,000th replacement of Mama Morton. No, I kind of went in and did a whole new spin on something. So there's always things to excavate, especially in musical theater, and I've not replaced at all on Broadway. That was the first time I'd ever replaced. You know what I'm saying? But it's
Yeah.
a legendary show, and that's really what that machine is now. I mean, I would have been miserable if I hadn't, said yes. That was fantastic. I had the time of my life. So there's always more.
Was there one performance where you felt like you left it all on the stage? I mean, I'm sure after you perform hundreds upon hundreds, thousands of times in your career, and every single time you give 1,000,000%, but there's always those moments where you think like, I gave every cell, every fiber, every morsel of my soul into that performance, into that role, and you walk off stage feeling like a transformed actor.
I would have to say it's the one there are no bootlegs of, and no one really, the core fan base saw it, but no one was sitting there with cameras. It was Love Janis off Broadway. It actually was the two big shows I did off Broadway were Love Janis and the Great American Trailer Park musical. I would have to say the most transformative role I've ever played was Janis Joplin. First of all, the only real person I have ever gotten to play. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? She was Janis Joplin,
right.
It was just a very unique experience, and every one of us that was lucky enough to be in that show had that exact transformative experience. We all did, because there were two of us on stage, the acting Janice and the singing Janice. And when we get together, Catherine Curtin and I did the show together. She and I are always like, that was something that will never happen again because it was like as if, and again, you have to have an esoteric kind of bend to your personality. It was as if Janice was presiding over every performance. It was crazy. So,
Wow.
and to sing those songs and like, Ball and Chain closed act one, you had to mop me up off the floor. Like literally, it was so cathartic and so, you're screaming balls to the wall, these songs. It was like I always say it was 20 years of therapy in a 6-month run.
So tell us about the project, tell us about the music, tell us about why now is the time to release music in a time where people really aren't listening to music that much anymore. They're listening to 2 seconds on a TikTok versus a
Yeah.
full-length album, a full
Yeah.
project.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the way we kind of do it now. My songwriting partners and I think we go, let's put out a single.
Mhm.
Let's put out another single. Then let's put out another single. Because to your point, the attention span is different now. And we're not writing 4-minute songs. We're not doing 3 minutes and 35 seconds, which was kind of almost mandatory when I came up in the music business. You had to have 3 minutes and 35 seconds with a fade out,
Yeah.
or like, certain radio stations wanted a cold ending. So like
Hmm.
you had to have a cold ending. Um, Now we're just like, let's drop this single here. And you kind of like, there are certain days that you should drop the music. There are a lot of rules that didn't exist, but there were different rules back in the day. So, I think that we've recognized that people are good with like you kind of give them a single here and there and then it becomes a thing because it's not necessary to your point to do a full length album. You know what I mean? That's I think for the bigger acts, I think that, obviously when Taylor Swift comes out, she has to drop a whole album. You know
Or
what I mean?
Beyonce, or
Yeah,
yeah,
or Beyonce or any of the like top top the heap, you know. Me, I can put out a single. That's, you know, whenever we cut it, we can be like, let's put this out X day, Y day. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's that. I mean, it's just fun. And my core fan base like waits for it and they love it and they're so supportive. I would love it to go global. You know, some of the songs deserve, I always think like if I just, you know, pitched this to a major artist, it would be a global smash. So, you know, it's not that the congruency of it all is not, you know, there at the moment, but you know, we'll see. We'll see. I'm just gonna keep putting out music, so it doesn't matter.